looking around the council chamber. The 50-odd races looked uncomfortable as they waited. The ambassador of the Larashi stood at the podium. By every account of her people's greatest minds, stated that he and all his race should be enslaved by now, and yet here he was, despite all calculations. What's more, he was asking for a race they met while at war with the Zandir race to be allowed into the council. The Larashi had stated that these humans, as he called them, had apparently been the ones to help them win the war, and what more, all they asked for in return, be introduced to the rest of the council. Odd, she thought, for a race to have effectively thrown a war of annihilation into a complete victory for the would-be loser, and only ask for an introduction was absurd. The humans are a kind, helpful race and are eager for peace. I and my race do believe that the human race will offer many wonderful things to the council and the galaxy as a whole, Larishi spoke. Glancing about to the room, his eyes landing on her, she felt like he wanted to say something, but continued on his speech. To quote a human phrase, that they will seek out life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness with an energy that will leave us dizzying. But I am not their ambassador, so allow me to introduce Ambassador Davian Smith to the stand, Larashi said, and he gestured to the door. Almost no cue, the door opened, and a human walked in, dressed in textiles that covered most of this form. Not that impressive, she snickers to herself. It was barely her height, only about 6 units tall. 4 limbs ended in fingers, and a patch of red fur on his head. Smooth, soft-looking skin resting on what she could assume was an endoskeleton. She reached down for her translator. Of course, she would need it to understand this human. "Thank you, Ambassador Thalsnik," the human said in Galactic Common. "Oh, it speaks," she thought. "And thank you for taking the time to speak to me, esteemed members of this council. I am here this cycle to request membership to this grand body so the Terran Union would gain the support of this council," it said, as is it curled communication orifice at them. "Friendly signal," her translator informed her. "I will be frank and forward. Humanity's first steps into the stars was not a good one for us." He shifted slightly. Discomfort. Good, it knows its place. "We had stumbled into a war. The war was between the Larashi Star Conclave and the Zandir Empire. It was a mistake. We had no hand in the war." It paused again. Sadness. "However, the Zandir Empire had refused our attempts to rectify our mistake, and so we began to defend the small part of this great galaxy that we had claimed. We believe that in time this war will end and we could call out and clear the air." It glanced over to her left. "Hate, what is it looking to?" She followed it gaze. It was affixed on the Zandir ambassador. "Is he cowering?" she asked inwardly. The Zandir were a proud warrior race, more than a match for most races, not so much hers, but most of the races at the council. Yet it was. A Zandir shrunk down, tucked in his neck and folded the frills of the crown. Even in hopeless engagement with her people, the Zandir soldiers didn't react like this, and to a new race to the galaxy. "Fools!" she scoffed to herself. This race was like no other race that hadn't come before. The human continued, "We, the Terran Union, have found war amongst the stars, and we feel only sorrow. To see such wonder and yet be crushed by disappointment is terrible. When the Larashi came, we believe ourselves doom. We awaited their ships to attack and prayed to our goddess for deliverance for this fate." Its gaze shifted to the Larashi ambassador camaraderie. Its friends with the Larashi, they are doomed. And yet the Larashi asked if we needed help. We found hope that day. And so humanity made a singular vow that day, and in one voice asked them to take us to the stars. Humanity is still in the beginning stages of FTL, and we are still mastering shield technology. Our few ships, the ones we have, are being retrofitted to support these new advancements made with the help of the Larashi. However, we have to ensure that 2 things about humanity is made clear, and it is not without reason. That reason applies to both of what I would like to address before this council, it said. Sorrow. Humanity has by 2 things, 2 messages we would like for you to understand. Before I state what they are, I would like to address why they are so. It plugged in a data chip into the podium and moved it, hand sending her, and everyone a file. Humanity has laws in regard to warfare and how it should be conducted. We humans don't like war. We believe that it is in everyone's best interest to agree to the document I have just sent you. "Oh, how nice. A new toy for the Empire to shred at home," she muttered. And someone has agreed to its requests. Let's see. She looked at the document and rubbed her eyes in amazement. The first signature was from Zandir, and then Larashi. This document is a rectified agreement to the terms of war and how it should be conducted, amended to include all sapient life. I will summarize as it is long. In essence, it states that the only people to be attacked or harmed in war are to be solely combatants. An attack against non-combatants is a breach of these rules. Furthermore, any use of the later stated forms of war are also in breach of these rules. In the event that either of these rules are broken, the offended nation can disregard this rule and engage in total war. It stopped again, taking a long pull from its water. Also, with our armed forces, we have a role called medic. These soldiers are to be considered non-combatants and are not to be harmed. If one is harmed or attacked, no mercy will be shown to the attacker or to his squad. It stopped, regiment. It looked around the chamber as others read the document. And so I will lay before the reason for this document. During the war between the Zandir and Larashi, an orbital defense cannon fired on a Zandiran scout ship, believing it to be an asteroid on a collision course with our colony, on the planetoid YS-53, Ganymede, it exclaimed. Pain, it is in distress over a colony, weak. She shuddered. The colony soon learned of their mistake and contacted our home world and began to learn all we could form their databank. When the Zandir fleet arrived, a message was sent to them, and it read as such. We deeply regret the lose we have caused and hope that you do not look badly upon humanity. We ask for your forgiveness and ask that you show mercy. This message was sent 4 times as their fleet approached our colony. We did all we could with our limited technology. Grief, pain, anger, hate. The Zandiran fleet ignored all hails. Its eye drifted off and glassed the colony from orbit. It roared into the chamber. We humans do not want to fight because we believed that the stars held the promise of peace. We lost 2,000 souls that day, and we loathe the Zandir for what they did. She leaned over to the Galavrek ambassador. Oh no, it's anger, she said with a chuckle, which the Galavrek shared in kind. The human ambassador took a deep breath, eyes like cold etherglass and calm as he released his breath. I suppose you are all curious as to why I am so angry. So allow me to explain. As you all know, YS-5 is a gas giant in the space sector YS-9. 2. YS-3 Earth is humanity's homeworld. The room busted to shouts and roars. Almost every ambassador was on their feet at this revelation, and she understood why. Humanity are death worlders. Her adrenal glands were already pumping when she heard, but something struck her. The Larashi ambassador invited them. The only reason the war had begun was because the last Death Worlders they meet nearly destroyed their race. So why invite them? The room calmed down. The human continued. I understand and respect your fear. However, humanity has as much interest in war and conquest as a young Larashi has for swimming. Humanity has learned from its world, a harsh and sometimes unforgiving place. The value of life. To us, every single life, regardless of what form it takes, is sacred. We have shed our war-like mentality when we step to the stars. However, to our dismay, we found a galaxy at war. And so I shall move on to our only 2 statements to this galaxy. The first is simple, never again. This is it. As for why we choose it is, too, the Zandir killed 2,331 souls on Ganymede. The Larashi had stayed our hand against the Zandir. At the final hour, as the Larashi fleet over Zingran, they pleaded for us to not become the monsters we saw in the Zandir. And so never again will we stay our hand. Never again will we show mercy at the final hour. Never again will we allow someone to kill our civilians. It roared again before taking a deep breath. And the second statement is more complex, but I will elaborate in a second. We haven't forgotten. Lanha sat in her seat. Every nano unit of her being screamed at her to run. But why? It can't be the human. Her kind has dealt with Death Worlders before. She felt her skin clench together to protect her from an unseen predator. This statement is from our armed forces, and to be frank, it is more for the protection of your nations than ours. It said in a calm, collected coldness that her translator said was truthful. Though your technological level is much higher than humanity, and our fleet is still growing. I am afraid to inform you all that humanity's understanding of warfare and how war is to be fought is far more advanced than any of your races. In fact, the tactics and battle strategies you use and openly deploy, we read about in our history. And those battles were fought 1,500 Terran years ago on a death world. Truth. It is mad, she thought. To think that they kept fighting was insane. The battle line and tactics her people employed were used due to how well they are with the weapons they used. She glanced down to the document still open on her terminal and began to scroll down it. Also, the human ambassador said, the weapons technology that this galactic council deems the standard weapon of war to us is a high-tech relic of a bygone era. Had you come when the France Revolution happened, we would have loved them. However, as it stands at the moment, we can deploy far more devastation weapons and tactics than you. And so I state again, we haven't forgotten if you come for the Terran Union, you will find no battlefield you muster on, no rows of Terran linemen ready to trade laser fire, no cannonade to fire upon you as you march to our line. You will be fighting us as we had fought when our planet began to die on us. The chamber was still. It was unnerving. She looked to the Zandir ambassador, only to see he had shrunk so much in his seat that he was practically falling to the floor. Then she looked to the Larashi. His feathers stood on ends, his eyes wide and snout raised ever so slightly. Joy. He was happy. She could not let this human's insult to her people's way of war go unanswered. And she gathered her thought, how dare you? A booming roar formed the Galavrak ambassador. You dare to come to us, offer us peace, and then in the same cycle insult our institutions of war. He stood up. You dare to enter here and dictate to us who can and can't be killed in war, he boomed as he stepped towards the human. You dare to challenge us with war, to threaten us? The Galavrik towered over the human, his forearms behind his back, ready to strike the human. This will do. We can watch and learn, and then after the Galavrik start fighting, we will strike. She giggled. It would be easy to form a tactic after the opening battles of this war a few times. I do, bellowed the human, almost as loud as the ambassador. I dare because I know war. I have witnessed the war Zandir unleashed. I dare because I see the wars you wage. I have seen the loss of life you waste. I dare because I have felt the sorrow of a parent losing their kid, of a husband losing their partner. I dare because in this place you stare and bellow at the last colonists of New Hope. I dare because I have nothing to lose here and neither do my people. The Galavrik stepped back. I demand the rights of war. He said, the Galavriks demand to be the ones to subject these lowly humans, the ambassador said, looking over his shoulders at the council. Does anyone challenge my right? He called. None raised their hands. Lanha looked to the Larashi ambassador. He sat shaking his head, and then to the Zandir, who was, as the translator stated, was praying for the Galavrak. And then she looked to the human. It had curled back his Orpheus and revealed a row of sharp fangs, such a predatory display, like the kind she saw at the zoo from fearsome predators of her people's past. A chill ran up then down her nervous system. Then it is to be a war between humanity and the Galavrik? The human asked, like a seasoned warrior would ask his battle clan. And what will be the terms of engagement? We will tear and rip your people, your males killed, the females sold as slaves on our worlds to be used and younglings tossed from airlocks into the hungry void. We will show a war you can't imagine, weapons that will rend your worlds to bleed and war that will consume your people. And we will rid the galaxy of another death world race of vermin, yelled the Galavrican. The human looked to its right and then back at the Galavrik, and in a calm voice with that wide, predatory grin said, You sure you don't want to sign that document before we start? As the first fleet of the Terran entered the system of GRD-6, I watched as they scanned the system, and they noted a total of 75 Galavrak warships of every make and cannon, almost 5 times the first fleet's number, which the Terran war leaders call Carryars. This was it. They would be crushed here and now, but I needed to leave. I couldn't be on the bridge of their warship when it was destroyed. As I requested to be taken to my personal craft, their war leader laughed and said, I quote, "They aren't even in our weapons range yet, and you want to leave?" The sheer unyielding amusement on his damned face grated on my instinct to slay him right there. Then the human ambassador spoke up. "Ambassador Lanha, this is the best seat in the house. You requested to see how we conduct war. This is where you can see it best." That damned monster that had so easily been baited by the Galavrik into war looked like he was positive of their victory. "If you can assure my safety, then I shall remain. However, when this battle turns for the worst, I want the fastest way off this ship." No sooner than my statement settled did the crew begin to go to work. Their war leader barked orders and requested information. I heard one crewman, a woman with a short-cut pale yellow fur, said that the Galavrik hadn't made landfall and the garrison forces were smacking them away. An odd thought came to me when I had heard that a garrison force on this backwater colony, not even one of strategic value according to the comm officer, a role of a battle clan that sends and receives information that is broadcast, had been keeping the Galavrak Cossacks away. And then the intel officer, a role of a battle clan that reports enemy activity and scans the regional system, stated that he was confused by the movements of the Galavrik fleet. He displayed a closer image of the Galavrik fleet. I will note here that the distance between the two fleets was still around the sum of 15 giga units of distance, and yet the image before me was clear as if I was next to them. The war leader turned to me with a confused look on his face and asked, "Are they moving into broadside formation?" I gave the approximation of a nod, a human gesture of affirmation, and waited for the war leader to respond. I had hoped that he would respond in dread of what he faced. Instead, he laughed again. At first, I mistook it for madness. He was broken, unable to lead his little fleet, until I saw his face. Their war leader was laughing again. This time, like a man possessed, he roared aloud enough that I winced at the volume and tone, but his face took even me by surprise. He was, as the humans call it, grinning. This is a wide and exaggerated smile that made as many of the fangs of this human as visible as possible. I have been told that this gesture is made when a human has made a self-affirmation of something as absolute truth. I waited to see his next orders. What I heard dumbfounded even myself. He simply said, "Bring us into weapons range and let's teach these four-armed incestuous aliens what happens when you present a larger target." I will assert here and now that I am not a war leader nor a battle clan. However, I do have an understanding of basic galactic void combat. When two fleets meet in void, they will begin to circle each other, slowly closing the gap until weapons range is achieved. Then both fleets will fire salvo after salvo until one fleet is rendered immobile, at which point boarding actions will take place to seize the enemy vessels. However, the humans even sneer at this noble form of naval combat as ineffective. The human fleet advanced straight at the Galavrik, not turning their broadsides to them. At about 8.5 giga units, the Terrans stopped, and I had hoped they saw the error of their way and would now turn, that they would now follow the example of their betters. But I was not ready for what I heard next. The intel officer leaned back and said in an almost gleeful voice, "Weapons range achieved." "High Emperor, if you read this, do understand that I had not fed you any false information. The Terran's maximum range is 8.5 giga units, nearly 4 times our laser cannon range. At first I didn't believe it had I not heard the weapons officer. A role of a battle clan that is to power and target weapon system and prove targeting solutions. Yell a moment after, weapons are hot, tubes are loaded, nukes ready, and PDS are deployed and waiting, sir." I looked to my fellow ambassador, a whirlwind of emotions flooding every inch of my being. He smiled and said, "The show is about to start. Also, do remember to read over that document." I watch in awe, and the humans fired their MACs. At first, the ship did nothing for a nanocycle, and then I heard it a groan thought out the ship as though something had hit it. However, out the viewport of the vessel, I saw spears of light race across the heavens and dimed as this flew at the Galavrak. A moment later, I saw no less than 15 Galavrik ships implode at the impact. Every ship in the Terran fleet had not only hit its target, but obliterated it. Before I could take in what I had seen, the war leader commanded that fire half the tubes in a crane wing formation. As soon as the order had been given, I watch in horror as a clutch of hatches on the prow of the vessel opened and a smaller flotilla of cylindrical ships flew out and began to arch both above and below the Gallivrek fleet, and I, for the first time in nearly 300 loops, prayed. If these Macs were so deadly, why have more than one weapon system? Needless to say, I learned nanocycles later, these tubes the humans spoke of work like a high-output scatter laser cannon. As each tube begins to approach its target, it would unravel into thousands of smaller vessels, each carrying an explosive device equal to a Calarius mortar shell. I saved the worst of this weapon for last. I thought that these tubes were piloted by a human. However, upon questioning the ambassador after the battle, he stated, "They are self-guiding, we point, and it will get its target." I watched as this new race, still fresh to the doorway of the galaxy, had in the span of 5 nanocycles laid 42 Gallivrak ships of the line to a quick and dishonorable death. My blood boiled for the first time since I was a broodpap. This, my Emperor, is not the worst, I have to tell you. The Terrans' last weapon that they used in this battle, it is the most horrifying. The war leader called for nukes to be fired at all the Gallivrak that remained but one. I watch, and out of the prow of every ship that had fire between 2 to 3 vessels each, much smaller than the tubes. This propelled themselves for a few seconds before shutting off their drives. I watched in horror and dread as I first saw the ships at the ends of their formation flash like stars, burning brightly for a moment before vanishing. Had the rest missed? I pondered before the heavens shone with the light of 1,000 suns and vanished just as quickly. I looked to the war leader and then the ambassador, seeking an answer as to what I had witnessed. The response gave me all the reasons I needed for the end of this report. Thermonuclear missile, much like your people first, void ships, rockets bit with a bit more. And so, my great Emperor, it is with a heavy heart and dread for the fate of our people that I must now ask the near unthinkable, and will throw my life at your feet if I mean you heed my words. We must not, under any and all circumstances, be the enemy of humanity. For if we are, and we are doomed, I implore you to sign the document that I am transmitting, and beg of you to now do not seek out the humans in any theater of combat. Ambassador Lanha. The council was silent. The Gallivrak ambassador was a husk of his former self. He was once an imposing figure, bulked from muscle training and a hearty diet. But now he looks malnourished and gaunt, and his voice weak. I call the human ambassador. He spoke into a microphone at the podium. The human ambassador stood from his seat by the Larashi. Humanity hasn't been given a seat, but was there as an allied guest of the Larashi. He walked down to the center floor. "What do you want?" he growled. His anger of the Gallivrak seeped into every word. "We surrender. We placed our fate in your hands. All we wish to ask is for you to show us mercy," Gallivrak said. "We see now why you wished for peace. We know why you have rules for war, and we offer you our conditional surrender." "What were the 2 things we said to you, to all of you?" the human asked aloud. "What?" The Gallivrak looked confused. "What were our only 2 messages to you in this council?" the human asked again. "We wish to surrender. Why does this matter?" the Gallivrak ambassador said. "Because we warned you," the human roared back, pointing his finger. "We told you to sign. We told you not to attack or kill civilians. We said you would die if you crossed the line," the human said before calming down. "So, no, we don't accept. We pulled your logs, and we know about Balgiga." The Gallivrak ambassador froze. His face drained of color, and his hand began to shake. The human glared at the Gallivrak down. "Should I tell the council what it is?" he said, watching the Gallivrak. The Gallivrak started. I guess I will," the human said, and turned to face the council. "Balgiga is a special protocol for all admirals of the Gallivrak fleets. If the flagship is the last ship to survive a battle, it is to detonate their main and secondary reactor as close to their primary objective." The human took a deep breath and exhaled from his nostrils. "I'm sure most of you know that the explosion is enough to start a chain reaction that will destroy most habitable planets." He paused. "As I am sure most of you know, this council has laws against the intentional destruction of a habitable planet. So I ask, what was most Gallivrak admiral's primary objective?" The human stopped, turned back to the Gallivrak ambassador. We don't accept anything less than an unconditional surrender of all of your entire galactic holdings and people, he said with a hard tone. And anyone involved in Balgiga Protocol will be handed over for trial. The Galavrek ambassador sunk in his seat a bit. What will happen to them? They will be placed in a habitat on a lifeless rock in your home sector. Then we will place a primary and secondary reactor on the other side of said rock. We figure they will have exactly 5 hours until the reaction reaches them, but they will most likely meet their end about an hour or two before then, as the radiation wave will have ravaged most of their internal organs, the human said with what sounded like cooled wrath. You see, that is the fate they authorized to happen to not 1 but 3 of our colonies. They will go into hell feeling the excruciating pain that they have inflicted, and they will know the whole way that they were warned of their fate. And what of my people, those who had and haven't fought? The Galavrek asked hesitantly. Your Imperium will be destroyed. Your people given name will be changed, and will be made a protectorate under the Terran Union for a sum of 500 human years. The combatants will be checked on a case-by-case basis for any who have committed war crimes as outlined by the Geneva Convention. Those found guilty will be punished accordingly. Those who haven't broken our laws of war will be allowed to return home. The human answered as if there was no doubt about his union's victory. As for you, Ambassador, we know about your involvement, and a suitable sentence has already been chosen. The council room was eerily silent as the last word hung in the air. What will you do with me? The Galavrek shuddered. We are making you the historian. You will be sent to a different station every cycle, and you will tell all you meet that you are the last Galavrek. That when you had the choice to save your people and stay humanity's wrath, you instead choose to fan it. And when that flame you kindled grew far greater than you could imagine, it was you that doomed your people and yourself to this fate, when you signed the Balgiga Protocol into active use. You will be the last Galavrek. The Galavrek rose slowly, and the 5 human months of war had worn him down. I, the Galavrek ambassador, find these terms unacceptable. We will never bend the knee to you. 5 months later, the Galavrek homeworld was virus-bombed by a Terran Union's first fleet. The ambassador and his cousin, the Galavrek Emperor, were found among the dead. Along with their 50 collaborators, they had all attempted to wait out the virus in a well-supplied bunker. They had underestimated the terrain virus lifetime. Their remaining holds surrendered unconditionally. Human civilian lives lost to Galavrek forces 1.3 million across 6 colonies. Galavrek civilians saved from Galamar 3,2.7,245,674. Galavrek in their language means proud warrior. After the war, they willingly accepted a new name. Kioshian, in human terms, the innocent. It was 207 loops since the fall of the Galavrek Imperium, and Lana was unnerved by her orders. She had been told so little, and yet something didn't sit right with the council meeting. Every race had its ambassadors there. The human and their Kioshian representative, the Larashi and Xandir, were discussing something about hyperspace lanes, even the enigmatic Calarius, and all the while her orders played over and over in her head. Support the returning race. The empire is many, and our wealth is vast, was what the High Emperor told her before returning to the council. She studied the latest of humanity's ambassadors. The woman was as much a diplomat as a war strategist. Lanha didn't understand why humanity changed its ambassadors every 50 loops, but they did, and every one of them was an enigma in their own right, always skirting around questions and never making hard promises. This latest one was called Roit Abadi, and as far as Lanha could tell was the cleverest one of all. She always seemed to know exactly what whoever she was talking to wanted, always hinting at actions the Terran Union could take but never saying which outright. The Kioshian representative of the Kioshian Citizens Republic was standing not too far anyway, talking with a Mizani, and they seemed to be discussing a trade deal. The former Galavrek was dressed in traditional robes that covered most of her form. None ever knew what they looked like. There are rumors and gossip, but no one knows who the Kioshian people chose as their voice. The representative never showed their face even in broadcasts to their home. The Kioshian are far more reserved and secretive than their former selves, and it made the Empire's spies work a lot harder. Those same spies stole tech from the Terrans and found as many of their anchorages and shipyard. The same spies made her argue for hours with the High Emperor over whether or not the Empire can win a war against humanity. She was spared the executioner's axe only because of her bloodline, and the Emperor believed that she made a useful scapegoat mat. She still didn't understand why she was told not to worry about this meeting, but it didn't sit right with her. Finally, the council members found their seats and the meeting could start. The Galactic High Council called for silence, and a tall Salsaet stood. "We are gathered here to lead witness and hear a request by the Crown Prince of the Galavrek Imperium, Prince Kazdan, last of his name and heir to the throne of Galamar," they said, as a young Galavrik of royal colors marched into the council and to the podium. He was dressed in a magnificent military uniform, complete with the imperial sword sitting at his hip. "Thank you, High Councilman. I am Crown Prince Kazdan, Crown Prince of the Galavrik Imperium, last of my name and heir to the throne of Galamar, and rightful sovereign of the Galavrikan people, and I am here today to make a difficult request of this council." He spoke in a mastered cadence, all the while maintaining eye contact with everyone but two in the council. "I have come to call for a denouncement of the Terran Union and its immediate expulsion from this council. I have also come to call for full military aid for the reclaiming of my birthright, the Galavrek Imperium's territories, currently illegally occupied but the slave nation of the Kioshian Citizens' Republic." He seemed to hiss the last words with utmost hate. The chamber was still. No one was sure of what to do. This wasn't happening. If the council voted and the request passed, it meant the Terrans couldn't be restrained by the council laws. "I am sorry," came the calm and soft voice of the human ambassador, "but the council can't pass such a request." She said as she rose from her chair, "Humanity has had 5 ambassadors be sworn into office after we joined. We are now legacies, and as such, we can't be removed unless the whole council votes in favor of the act. If even one nation opposes the vote, it will not pass." She slightly leaned towards the Larashi ambassador. "As for the territories under the control of KCR, they are free to trade and make deals with every other nation of this council at their discretion. We only support them militarily, in the form of a defense pact." The Larashi ambassador stood. "We will always be friends to humanity," he said with conviction. "The Zandir Empire will never side against the Terran Union," said the Zandir ambassador, almost jumping from his seat. "Thank you both. Humanity sees your actions here today." The human ambassador responded. Lana connected the changing of the ambassador. Davion left shortly after humanity gained a seat. He gave the role to his assistant, who left a few loops later. At this point, humanity has had about 6 ambassadors. They had done that on purpose, like they knew this day would come. "Crown Prince Kazdan," the human ambassador said carefully, "we have been looking for you. Your people need you." She gestured her hand towards him. "Your family needs you. Your mother and sisters all need your aid to give your father and uncle a true rest." She watched as his face hardened at her word. "But you care not for my words. You hate us for the war, so listen to her." The humans step aside, allowing the Kioshian to step forward. "Kazdan, we see your anger and feel your grief, but this war you seek will end only one way." Her voice rang out from under the veil. "Please just shed the name of our failure. We need you," she said calmingly, her tone warm and full of promise. "Please do not doom us to conflict and strife. Our people do not need it." The Crown Prince looked unsettled a bit before his hatred returned, and he yelled at the representative, "Watch your tone, serf. You speak to your Crown Prince. I am as such due to the monster you stand beside. None of my family live, and as such, I am your monarch." The representative stepped back only to find the human ambassador placing their hand on their back and nodding. The Kioshian looked back to the prince. "I see you have bought all the lies you have been fed by your guards." The representative reaches up and pulled back her hood and veil. Her brilliant chiton, a wondrous shad of the imperial gold. Her ridge stood tall as she aimed her 6 eyes at the prince. "I am Empress Salius, holder of the throne of Galamar, chosen ruler of the Kioshian Citizens' Republic." She watched her wayward son. "I disown you of your title and reject you as my successor." You do not know what the humans are or want you may unleash should you continue. Now renounce our former name and come home. Mother, you have been fooled. The humans do not care for our people. They virus-bombed our home world. They do not care who they kill or how. They had killed far more of our people than we did theirs. The prince yelled back. They kill our world and didn't blink because of overzealous admirals. I know exactly what they are. They are monsters and need to be purged. Surrender now. I have many friends and their wealth is vast. I can't save you if you stand against me. That last part rang home with Lanha. This is what the Emperor planned for. But the humans moved far quicker. This was meant to be a purge, but it was now a civil war. And that Galea cursed man promised a missing prince the Empire's support. She had to make a choice. She could follow orders and commit to a civil war. A civil war that would pit her people and the Empire against what she believes to be the singularly unbeatable race. Or she could stay silent and be killed for treason. She looked at the human who was watching her. The human ambassador was watching her like she was reading her mind, and a memory from a short conversation with Reut came to her mind. She wasn't sure if she was imagining the conversation, but she remembered that the human ambassador said something about the freedom of self-determination and its rightful place for all sapient life, and she knew what she needed to do. Lanhan nodded at the human and stood. The Kalmizar Empire pledges its support to the Crown Prince Kazdan, she said before drawing a deep breath. However, the Katval will not fight against humanity and requests its assistance in securing our freedom. The council was again left speechless. Twice now in one cycle had the unthinkable happened. The Terran Union pledges full support of your cause. We will never leave those who are in need of aid without, Ambassador Reut said immediately after Lanha finished. However, we can't fight two wars at once, so your people will need help. The Larashi Star Conclave pledges its support of the Katval in their war for independence, Ambassador Thalznik said with a quick follow. The Kalarius Technocracy offers our aid in the form of ships and weapons to the Katval people. We will repay our debt to your ancestors, the Kalarius ambassador said as he stood. Lanha looked on in awe at the aid. Her people will finally be free. She looked to Empress Salius, who had turned to face her. The Kioshian Citizens' Republic offer our aid in time. Once our civil war has ended, however, we will pray for your people's deliverance for the yoke of that tyranny. The Empress turns to face Son once again. I do not know why you would refuse to join your family again, or what promises the Kalmizar Emperor made, but you are no son of mine. You are now a Kaishimalov. You will find no friend in this war. The prince roared back, my innocence is not lost. Subscribe for part 2 tomorrow. Unmarked anchorage in deep space between GRNV-1 and Kim-23, Galavrik Kioshian front. January 31st, 3506. Kazdan was furious. Those monsters have turned even his mother against him. His one hope is that the Kalmazar Emperor would not kill her without giving him a chance to capture her. No, not capture, save her. He will save his mother and his sisters if they are still alive. He will restore his empire and wipe humanity out. He will bring honor to his name. My prince, we are on the final approach. The pilot of the stealth corvette he was traveling on said through the intercom. Good. We need to take the advantage of our enemy's missed chance to capture me, he said back. It was odd the humans moved their ambassadors around in one of their carriers, and yet they didn't move to intercept him even after the pilot said that they had a lock on them. So much had happened. How could have those monsters made themselves legacies? Their race can live comfortably for around 100 loops, and yet they have had 6 ambassadors already. Why would his mother side with them? And why did that Fingrad Katvalan start a rebellion? And more importantly, why did it feel like the monster looked so disappointed when he refused his mother's request? So many questions. The corvette shuddered as it was magnetically locked with the station. You are free to unhook and move about the ship. Thank you for the honor of traveling you, my prince, the pilot said as the boarding ramp lowered. The sound of the Imperial Symphony began to play as he walked down the ramp to an awaiting entourage of admirals, lords, and generals, all in a kneeling bow to him, waiting for his click to rise, the way it was meant to be. like it was for his father and grandfather and every emperor before him. But he wasn't the emperor, not yet. He needed his seat first and let his pincers click. They all rose slowly and looked at him. "My prince, how was your flight?" asked a lord whose name escaped the prince. "It was surprising but uneventful. Thank you," Kasdan said back. "I trust that all the preparations are ready," he said, turning a bit to his left, towards his former guard captain, now Grand War Master. "Yes, my prince, we have received confirmations from all battle groups. What's more, all Kozak forces have made planetfall covertly and are getting ready to start," the Grand War Master said back quickly. "And our supporters?" said the prince. "We have received word from all but the ones on the home world. They are all ready to rise against the monsters," the Grand War Master said. "How did the council meeting unfold?" "The monsters have been switching their ambassadors too quickly. They are now classed as legacies of the council and have the full support of the Larashi. Alas, the motion to purge them would have failed, so the vote for it was vetoed," the prince said, and then sighed hard. "The next bit will make things so much worse. Moreover, our imperial allies have been dragged into a civil war with Katvalan rebels, so we will have to fight for a while on our own." "That will not be a problem. The Katval can't fight the Empire," one general said. "Yes, we all know that is the case. However, the monsters, Larishi and Kalariusans, all have pledged to support their war. So, no, we may have to fight this war mostly on our own." "The Kalarius have joined with the Katval?" one lord said, confusion evident on his face. "It would make sense. The Kalarius technocracy is a highly isolationist nation. They only sell munitions and ship templates. They don't wage wars, and they definitely don't fight for others. The Kalarius said that his race was indebted to the Katval and would pay them back," the prince said, which only led to more speculation. The group reached the Situation Room and watched the holo map of the sector, and a few collections of techs at different stations around the room. The prince walked to the raised platform where a throne was placed and sat down. "Open a channel to all markers," he said loudly, "and watch as the techs scrambled to get everything ready." And then finally the head tech looked at him and nodded. "This is Crown Prince Kasdan to all true Galavriks. I am declaring a rise to our honor, to our pride, to our imperium. Rise now for our history and culture. Rise now not for the weak, but for those who have died. Rise now to reach for your birthright. The monsters at our gates have bitten at our name, and now we bite back. The Galavrik Imperium have not gone to the grave. We now strike out at our enemies. Show them wrath, show them fury, show them your hate. Show them our power, show them fire, show them pain. For we will not be forgotten, and we will never surrender. All hail the Imperium," the prince announced into the room. The room was silent for a second, then a thunderous applause rang out as everyone was on their feet. Nationalism, that's what the monsters called it. He hated it. They have been forced to use the monsters' technology and tactics, even words, sometimes. But there was one word that they both have: war, and he would make sure the monsters feel it. He watched as different solar systems switched from blue to green as different parts of his army were taking action. It was satisfying to see. They had the outer edge of his former empire and 3 core systems in about 10 lesser cycles, like a perfectly executed version of his plan. But something threw him off. Too many techs were talking with their supervisor, of whom none had said anything. "You, what is all the commotion about?" Kasdan said while pointing at a supervisor that had just received a report. The young Galavrik almost fell over at the sudden address. "Well," he paused and looked to the report in his hand. "All of our forces on Alina have reported no opposition." He hesitated. "Or civilians. The world is effectively abandoned. My prince—" "What the jolly is, are you saying?" the prince yelled. "What do you mean abandoned Alina was the Empire's breadbasket? How could it be abandoned?" "My prince, I don't know, but it's true. And not just Alina, all of the systems we have taken are empty," the supervisor said in fear. "None of our forces have made contact with the enemy." Kasdan froze, and his plan rallied on his forces to capture worlds and their civilians. He was going to press them to supply the war effort. He was winning, so why did he feel cheated? Why would they abandon their homes? Where did those people even go? "Admiral Jais, General Kosmar, you are to take command of the 12th Battle Group and attack the Kakval system. Kill anyone who stands in your way, and find me those civilians." The prince said, "Have Battle Groups 6 and 14 reinforce the 12th. and someone check on the Fingrad spies. I want to know how this information failed to reach us. Gallimar, War Room of the Palace, Galavrik Kioshian Front, January 30th, 3506. The room where the fallen Galavrak Emperor once made plans was a marvel of architecture. Prestigious marble walls and floor lined by solar-forged gold, the long window that shone even in the night as the crystal lattice returned the energy they took in during the day. If Salius wasn't tired before now, she certainly was now. How it wasn't the time. She had a task her people entrusted to her, and she would see it through. She looked around the room. Her daughters were all there now, dressed in military uniforms of their respective positions, along with the contingent of Terran admirals. There were also a handful of non-royal generals and admirals, taking the place of her lost sons. The Terran's FTL was much faster than most other races, and always made her a bit sick after they dropped back to real space. But she was thankful. She hadn't had the time to change into the full war regalia of her people, but she was here, far earlier than her son would be to his control center, and she would capitalize on this. You all have by now heard the news, or at the least seen the footage of the council meeting. Prince Kasdan has returned, she said, watching as some of her more hopeful daughters lit up with joy. However, he wishes to chase the failed dreams of my great-grandfather, and so has declared war on this nation. She watched as those who had hoped against the reality that war would be avoided be crashed under her words. It hurt her just as much. He is most likely her last son, and he was her brightest, truly talented, and capable of many wonderful things. Yet now he was blind. The prince plans to take a hold of our outer systems along with Alina, Hinosa, and Kiaso. He plans to starve us out, to erode our power. However, he has not walked our worlds or seen our people. The breadbasket he plans to hold is no longer a truth to our nation. So, he can have his lightning strike, and we will have a grand time letting him chase our shadows, she said with confidence in the plan they had made, and nodded to her eldest daughter. As her eldest stood up, the hollow map of the nation manifested from the table. We will be activating the contingency plan Fabian Void. As outlined in Step 1, our fleets and transports will immediately depart to their assigned systems and evacuate everyone there to one of the following systems, she said, like she was reading out of the plan's document itself. Once that's done, we will launch raids on his deep space outpost and listening stations. Our plan isn't to destroy them, but to damage them. He will, of course, find out about the evacuation, and will try to take one of 3 systems. We will have 3 fleets waiting in deep space. Once his fleet is engaged, we will jump in behind. Our overall objective is to capture as many of their personnel as possible. However, you are all authorized to use as much force as you believe is necessary. Our intel is good. Our spies have made many double agents, however. We need to know where my idiot brother is. She sat back down. Thank you, Kyla, Salius said calmly, before turning to the Terrans. Please remember that while most of our nation remembers the horrors of the final night, some still cling to the hate of the old Galavrik. If you encounter such people, allow us to handle them. The 4 admirals saluted her and said in unison, Yes, ma'am. Good. Now go. I don't wish for a long war. The sooner we get it done, the sooner I can sleep, she said, rising from her seat, as everyone gave their salute as she left the room. It took her the better part of a unit to reach her chamber. It was quiet here, and she was finally alone, and it all rushed back to her. The joy of her son alive and healthy, the pain at his words and actions, the grief at his hate of her and her people. And then finally, in the cold dark where none could see her, she cried. Council Station, Office of the Kalmazar Empire, January 31, 3506. Lanha sat in silence, her former guards now turned wardens, watching every move she made. Why did she do that? Why did she spark a rebellion? Why risk her people for humans? No, not for humans, for themselves. Her people were subjected just after figuring out FTL and have been slaves ever since. They had tried to revolt before but failed, and the price they paid was steep. But she and her mother wore it, the last of the Katval monarchy, and she will see her people free. Free to choose their wars and treaties, free to love and live, free to do what they wished and not be forced to do what the Empire wants. Then her terminal started blinking. She looked at what it was. The Emperor was attempting to contact her. What that golly accursed waste of air want now, she thought, and activated the connection. She watched as the Emperor's royal face mask came into focus. "Ah, Lanha," he said in a sickeningly sweet voice. "I hear from your aides that you followed my orders to the latter, however not the full meaning. They say that you have declared a rebellion. Is this true?" Lanha was seething. This fool would doom her people. "Yes," she said back. "I did because you would doom your empire for a runaway prince. You will not have my people's lives of this." "I see, that is—" He paused like he was thinking over his actions, though she could see it was an act. "An unfortunate turn of events. You will surrender to your guards and aid," he said harshly. "If you do not, I will be happy to send you the head of your mother." Lanha's heart sank. She had held to false hope he would leave her out of this, that she would be safe because of Kalmazar's code of honor. But she should have known better that man doesn't care. She had known him all his life. They grew up together and studied together, but he was always vile. "If you harm a hair in her mane, I will kill you myself," Lana roared at him. As she was about to continue, the alarms bleared to life and the red emergency lights kicked to on. She ignored the Emperor's words as the announcement rang out. "Brace for impact. Repeat, brace for impact." "Some madman is ramming the station?" she thought, but went pale as she saw something out her viewing wall. There in the void was a small cylindrical object flying fast at her office. "You coward!" she roared at the Emperor. "I see you would rather kill me outright then." She was interrupted as the object hit home, breaking right through the reinforced wall next to the viewing wall. Yet no explosion came to kill her. Instead, a group of 6 piled out. She saw the blackened carapace armor of their suits and the red visors in their helmets. They were Calariosans. She was sure of it. One of them moved to her, keeping their weapon aimed at the door, while the other did the same from where they were. "Are you Lanha?" "What?" she stammered. Yes, I am Lanha." "Good. I thought we missed," they said as they put their weapon away and removed a large sack from their back. "Please put this one. It is a void suit that can resize itself. It is made with a Katvalan's forms in mind," handing the sack to her. "Lana, if you leave, I will kill your mother," the Emperor yelled, witnessing the event unfolding in front of him. Lana stopped. Could she do this? Should she? She wasn't sure. She began to pull back, and the Calarius saw it and touched her hand. "Your mother is safe. We got her before coming for you. We promise your late grandfather that we will do everything we can to free your people, and we fully intend to do so." The soldier said softly in Catvern, "So please come with us. Your people need you." Lana was taken aback. The Calarius had broken intergalactic law by rescuing her. They had saved her mother from the center of the Empire. They were keeping their promise to her grandfather. All the hope she once had came kicking and screaming back into her being. She will see her people free. "Go fuck yourself!" she roared at the Emperor. "You are speaking to the granddaughter of Lahidn, late king of the Katval Star Kingdom, and I will not be cowed by that likes of parasites like you." She got the suit on quickly and turned to the soldier. "Take me to my mother." Council Station System Edge of Lightspace, January 31st, 3506. As Lanha stepped out of the craft that had carried her to freedom, she was met by an unexpected sight, that of the human ambassador and a small entourage of what looked like officers of Human, Larashi, and Calarius. However, the most surprising to her was that the highest-ranked officer, from what she could tell, was a Katvalan of gray fur and unglossed eyes. "Ambassador La'anha, it is a pleasure to have you on board my ship. Welcome to the Endeavor," the Katval officer said while bowing his head. "I am Admiral Kyathifan of the Calarius Corps Fleet. I must say when I was given my orders, I wasn't sure if the brass had lost their Kilulalance," he said, stepping a bit forward. "But your address in the council meeting and your declaration to the Emperor had been as your grandfather did. The flame of independence and freedom has been lit anew." Lanha watched this unknown admiral for a moment, then let out a controlled and steady breath. "As the heiress to the throne, I wish more than anyone to see our people prosper. But that oversized marsupial had to be an idiot just like his father. I will not see our people die for a war we should not have started." She placed a hand on the admiral's shoulder and bobbed her head. "Moreover, I am sick of watching those morons grow fat through our hard work. We were there first, and now we will be the first to break our chains, and the chains of any other that wishes." She paused and looked to the Terrans, "For life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." "Well said, Lanha," Rout said. A human admiral, whom Lanha recognized from somewhere, looked over with a wide grin. Bold yet appealing choice of words. There were a few more encouraging words. "Admiral Kiathifan, the soldier that rescued me, said my mother was also rescued. I would like to go see her." The admiral looked over to Rout. "The Terrans are the ones that completed that rescue. Perhaps Ambassador Rout knows where she is." Lanha looked at the humans. Surely it was a mistake. The human fleet couldn't have done it. They were still too small to breach the defense of Calmi, let alone reach the palace. "How much did humanity lose to free my mother?" she asked, dreading the answer. "One light cargo ship," said the human admiral. "What my counterpart meant was that the extraction of your mother was handled by a special operation team, who also faked their deaths at the edge of the Calmi system by intentionally detonating a reactor of a light cargo ship." Rout chimed in immediately. "She is currently being transported back to Terran space, and will be staying with one of our senators. However, she has declared you as the Katvalan leader for this war, so we can't take you to her yet," Kiathifan said. "That changes things," Lana said before turning to the admiral. "Can you send a message toward the Empire on all frequencies?" "Of course, and we have taken the liberty to set up a spot for a video message to be sent. Not just audio," the elderly Katvalan said with a glint of joy. "But first, let's get into FTL towards the Calarius technocracy. The Council Defense Fleet is following the trail of the boarding pod, and I am under orders to make that trail disappear. In FTL jump to the Calarius border system. KTSS Endeavor Utility Room 3. Lanha was now dressed in a well-made battle dress uniform of her people's old military. She had been given time to change and freshen herself. But the weight of the responsibility of her next actions would make or break the lines of her people. Most will listen to her message, and so would some of the other contracted races. But some wouldn't. Her people will be divided, and unlike the Galavrak and Kioshian, that line will be blared as families will be divided. A tech behind the camera started the countdown. A green light came on as the count hit 0. "My people, and all second and third citizens of the Kalmazar Empire, and all their contracted allies. I am former Ambassador Lanha, and I have an important message. Today, after 1,520 loops, I am declaring war on the Kalmazar Empire. This is a war for our independence, for our freedom, for our future. The reason for this war is that the current emperor has failed to see the dangers he has placed his sovereignty in. He has chosen to indirectly declare war on the Terran Union, a race that I concluded the Empire could not win against. This war would have our people bleed by the trillions, and our worlds and people suffer needlessly. I implore all those who wish freedom to take back the reins and come to my people's ancient and hallowed homeworld. To the glassed world of Katmaris, come and join this call to arms. A call for justice, a call for freedom, a call for liberty, and the rightful pursuit of happiness. Let today be the sounding of the war horns, the crack of the thunderous war cry. Let none stand against this. War has come to the empire of opportunists, and let them break against those who will accept nothing less than freedom." The light on the camera switched back to yellow, and a new pit formed in Lana's stomach. Terran War Room, Earth, Sol System, January 31st, 3506. Commander-in-Chief of the Terran Union looked out at the assembled admirals, generals, and diplomats. He was now going to have to make a decision about how to go about these two wars. On one hand, the Katval people have a right to be free, and on the other, the Terran Union swore to help protect the Kioshian Citizens' Republic. And yet he had to also consider defending the home front from yet-to-be-seen actors. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said in a claiming tone, "our Union is at war. Our garrison forces at the KCR have reported the implantation of a plan called..." He looked down at his notes. "Fabian Void." He cocked his eyebrow at the name for a brief moment. "The 1st to 4th QRF fleets are assisting them, and the likelihood of them needing more help is unlikely. And the Katvalans are going to be supplied by the Kalaruis technocracy. And the Larashi Star Conclave has deployed 2 of their fleets to take and form a foothold in the Kalmazar Empire. That takes the pressure off us, but we need to accept 2 things. He looked out to the whole of the room. 1, we don't know if there are other nations that will attack us. And 2, we don't know how or where the Kalmazar Empire will attack. We have 3 fleets in combat-ready status and an additional 5 good for defense but undersupplied, and 3 more currently being built up. So where does that leave us? He asked, though no one answered. Fucked if someone jumps in if we commit everything. Or pirates decide they want to try their luck again. So here is the plan. Fleets 4 and 5 will go and reinforce the QRF fleets in the Kyoshane front. Fleets 1 and 2 will go and help the Katval on that front, and the rest are staying put for now. In the meantime, I'll start pushing for war status to the Union, see about getting those nitwits off their butts and finishing our fleets. He gave a few of them one last glance. Let's get this done. Dismissed. The Katval System. Kyotian Citizens Republic. Galavrik, Kyotian Front. February 1st, 3506, 1020. KCRS Nidrhian. High Princess Kyla, Grand Admiral of the First Fleet, sat in her command station and wondered. In her musings, she questioned if her brother was right or if the whole war could have been avoided. She wondered if her people could have been spared the horrors of the final night. She wondered if her father ever did have the ability to surrender. Her thoughts and pondering were cut short as an intel officer nearly jumped out of her seat as an alert blew a monotone sound. Admiral, we have 3 groups of FTL arrival signatures coming in the system, 29 giga units away. Number of ships unknown, the startled officer said as they read off the information. Comms, Kyla called out. Nothing on schedule, ma'am. Switch to standby alert for all ships and send a tight beam to Gallimar, Kyla said, and she leaned back into her chair. This will be the opening battle of this war and will set the tone for this war. She had to win not just for herself, but also for her people. Comms, be ready to hail their flagship. Intel, I want numbers and ship types the second the exit FTL. Weapons, active everything but stay powered down on the main cannons. Engineering, power up the shields, Kyla ordered. Some of her officers were already at the tasks, but she wasn't about to second-guess what they were doing. Comms, when ready, open a channel to all ships and the planetary defenses. Channel open, ma'am. Kyla took in a deep breath, her mind racing, but right now she had to have a clear head. Sailors and soldiers of the Kyotian Citizens Republic. In a few nano-units, a cluster of unknown FTL signatures appeared on sensors. I have no doubt that these are fallen brethren, those who have failed to see the passing of time and hold stubbornly to a glorified version of our history. But we are the defenders of our new nation, one where everyone lives free, one where a person's course in life is determined by their will and drive for success. Through this change, my eyes have been opened. I see a bright, brilliant golden age, and I will fight for that age and for that future. So I ask, will you fight with me? Ma'am, all ships and ground stations are hailing back. Yes, we will, the comms informed her. Ma'am, UFCs are arriving, said the intel officer. Thank you both. Now report intel, what are we up against? Kyla said back. 3 battle groups of 50 ships plus 2 transport fleets of 30 each. Profiles match with modified Galavrek Gallons and Kalmazar battle cruisers. The transport fleet is composed completely of Kalmazar assault transports. Ma'am? Comms? Hailing now, ma'am, the comms officer said. Channel open. Unidentified flotilla, this is Grand Admiral Kyla. You will deactivate your drives and declare your intention, Kyla said at a terminal by her seat. There was an uncomfortable moment before the terminal flickered to life, and the image of a middle-aged Galavrak admiral looked at Kyla. This is Admiral Jace. You and your fleet will surrender immediately. You are in possession of stolen territory and people. You will accept your place in the serfs of the Galavrik Imperium. Admiral Jace, I find your request unacceptable. But I will say this. Surrender, save the lives of you and your men. You will be treated fairly and provided for. I don't want to fight you, Kayla said back. Surrender. I outnumber your fleet by a factor of 3 to 1, and that's not including the transport fleet, Admiral Jace said. Very well. I will keep this channel free for your surrender, Kyla said before terminating the hail. Nav, get us at max range, Kyla barked. Weapons, power up everything. Fleet, deploy all wings. Comms, tell the fleet to follow and prepare to engage. Yes, ma'am, responded the officers. She watched as the fleet began to move in formation, as fighters and bombers dusted off and took a position in the gaps between the massive ships. She was outnumbered. Her 50-strong fleet would have to knock out 3 each just to draw out this fight. But her ships are human ships modified to work with their anatomy. 10 carriers, 4 battle cruisers, 5 destroyers, and a quote buttload of frigates. She didn't have the numerical advantage, but she did have the quality advantage. Fleet, I want all fighters and bombers to attack their transport fleets as soon as they start moving. Relay to all wings. Weapons, open with the MACs and follow up with the Shredder missiles. Comms, contact CACVAL and tell the ground HQ that they may have company. She studied the TAC map. Now let's show them what KCRS Nidruhian can do. At 10 giga units, the ships groaned as the 3 MACs fired. The rest of her fleet was a second behind. Then the battle commenced. Now would be her hour. Now was the time of her rise. Deep space outside Kioshian Citizens Republic, Galavrak Kioshian Front, February 1st, 3506, 1035 TUSS Wake the Void. So that's their comms relay, right? Master Gunnery Sergeant Barker asked. Appears so, said Captain Holt. Not that it matters. We are here to make it a pain in the prince's ass. Great fire, up the rail gun and let go, said the Master Gunnery Sergeant. Can't, the captain said back. Orders to knock out but not destroy. So what do you think we should do, Marine? Well, according to Daniel, they don't know we are here, right? Barker asked. Yep. And we need as much intel that thing has without blowing it up? Barker continued. Yep. Easy. Me and the boys go and breach through 2 airlocks. Just before we start our approach, you fire shredders at their antenna and exposed weapons. We breach, kill everyone inside, and download all their databases, said Barker. Their tone and energy completely offset the fact they want to launch ordnance and assault crafts at the same time and attack a station in deep space that may or may not be rigged to self-destruct, and breach 2 airlocks while possibly taking fire from unseen weapons platforms. And all the while, Captain Holt could only smile. He loved insane plans, and former Sergeant Major Barker was the craziest Marine he had ever met. Sounds perfect. I'll get things ready. You go get your men ready. If this all goes to plan, they will have the intel and complete their mission here. But Barker is leading the Marines, so odds are that a few things will go wrong. Deep space outside Kioshian Citizens Republic, Galavrik Kioshian Front, February 1st, 3506, 1040. On board, the assault craft was cramped with 14 Marines ready to pounce. Barker looked around at her men and smiled. All of them were the nutcases that stuck around because, according to them, shit goes foobar for her in the best way. She didn't mind it. Sure, she got demoted, but her last mission was a clusterfuck, and she did her best to finish the mission and get her men out. No one was expecting a bunch of pirates to be good marksmen or to have heavy weapons. Just like how no one was ready for all 4 lieutenants and their captain to take anti-personnel rounds to the face within the first 5 minutes, or for their transport to be blown to Kingdom Come the second they got to their LZ, or that the pirates would deploy a comms jammer and a defense shield over their base. But she did it. She rallied the Marines, collapsed a tower, recovered the kidnapped civilians, and extracted everyone, even the dead. Head-Up Intel believes that this comm station is relaying data for the ongoing battle in CACVAL, said the co-pilot over the intercom. Confirmed, ETA, said Barker. 1 minute, shredders are about to impact, informed the pilot. Helmets on, get ready to space it. Alpha, Bravo, we have airlock 1. Charlie, Delta, airlock 2. Breach in 5 mics. Weapons free, but avoid collateral damage. Everyone got their helmets on and checked their weapons. Their void suit was sealed with a hiss and hum as the air in the cabin left an eerie silence. A few had to recheck their suits and lock down leaks. After the last checks were completed, Barker slammed her fist on the pilot door. Less than a second later, the magnetic locks of the assault craft were released and the 2 side doors opened, exposing the Marines to the vacuum of deep space. In the back of her mind, only one thought played out. I wonder if they have an automatic sealing system. The CACVAL system, Kioshian Citizens Republic, Galavrik Kioshian Front, February 1st, 3506, 1025, KCRS Nidruhian. The flagship rocked as another round from the enemy fleet hit the shields. Kyla held tight to her seat. Damage report, she yelled in the direction of engineering. Shields at 73% and holding. No breaches, but we can't take too many hits like that without diverting power to the array, the head responded. Increase power to the shield array by 15%, she commanded. Weapon shift PDS focus to intercept all missiles. We need time. Right away. Kyla was surprised by the counterattack of her brother's forces. Her ship alone had taken 3 hits and had its position shifted. But she had to buy time. It would take her allies about an hour to jump into the system, and she had to play this battle the best way she can. Ma'am, their transport fleet has broken off and is approaching Katkval, announced the intel officer. Our fighters and bombers will handle them, and my sister will handle any that make landfall, she said back. Our task right now, we need to keep their fleets up here. Her ship let out another groan as the main cannons fired again. She noted that one of the enemy ships blipped off the TAC map. Her fleet was doing a good job so far. She had only lost 2 ships to 10 of the enemy. She watched as the fighters and bombers broke into formation and chased after the transports. At the departure, the fleet's formation maneuvered slightly closed together to allow for the overlapping of PDS. Ma'am, one of the enemy battle groups hasn't engaged, said Intel Officer Kyla, snapped her attention back from the terminal to the TAC map, where, indeed, one of the enemy battle groups had stayed still. Order the Weimavark and Foriatmar to break formation and see if they can line up shots. If the enemy wants to stay still, then they can take some max to the face. Ma'am, said the comms officer. Everyone report, Kiali yelled out as the ship took another hit. We have lost 6% of our force, and the wings are reporting a 5% loss in strength. Enemy transport fleets have lost 16% of their original force. Enemy battle groups have lost 12% of their total power, the fleet officer said back after getting to his feet again. Shield at 66%, ma'am, yelled the head of engineering. Ground HQ has requested we maneuver to point 012 so they can provide long-range fire support, ma'am, a comms officer said. 3 Kila units until the main cannons are recharged. Missiles at 80% capacity. The weapons officer shouted while still typing away at his terminal. Ma'am, the enemy 3rd Battle Group is moving out of weapons range of the Weimavark and Foriatmar, a lieutenant commander said as they slid into the seat of a now concussed commander. Tell the Weimavark and Foriatmar to fall back into formation, Kiali said, turning her attention back to the TAC map. Something didn't seat right about the last battle group. Intel, rescan the 3rd Battle Group and see if they are actively transmitting anything. As soon as the word left her mandibles, the ship rocked again. Move the fleet to point 012 slowly. We will bait the enemy while buying time for our attack crafts. Something about that last fleet felt off. Comms, inform our reinforcement that they should arrive at point 015 and tell them it's Gullivar's word. Intel, inform me the second any of their fleets move at all. Her ship rocked again. Her adversaries didn't like giving her time to breathe, it seemed. Shields at 52%, ma'am. Ma'am, we have left weapons range, said the weapons officer. Enemy 2nd Battle Group has broken off and is moving into weapons range of point 015, the LC at the Intel station said. Their 3rd Battle Group is actively transmitting and receiving, ma'am. Comms, data burst new transmission frequency 0.13B nav. Bring us into the weapons range of their 1st Battle Group. Intel, start launching random arrival vectors on current frequency and use file F12 for confirmation, Kiali ordered. Weapons, fire free. I want that battle group shredded now. Those fools thought they could slip their interception of her communications past her. But she had spent 5 Earth years on Mars, in the Terran Union's military academy in Tyr. Their trick will not beat her. Maybe if she was one of her younger sisters, but not her. Comms, over the tight beam to Gallimar. Comms tapped, she said. February 1st, 3506, 1055. KCRS. Nidrian rocked again at the impact of the enemy fire. It was followed by a short hum. Shields are down, ma'am, the head of engineering yelled out. The battle was still in her favor. Her fleet had knocked out or destroyed nearly 30 of the enemy for the price of 7, a feat that had been achieved thanks to her intel officers noting the odd movements of the enemy battle groups and the fact that her enemies seemed to believe that she hadn't discovered their tricks. Had this war started 12 years ago, that maybe they had a chance, but her human classmates in the academy had seen to training her thoroughly. Nav, move us deeper into our formation. Comms, have the Comsra fill our position. Engineering, ETA on shields reboot, she ordered. 15 kilo units, ma'am, the head of engineering responded. We need over half of our fleet still combat capable for the next 45 kilo units. Comms, open channel to all active ships and wings, she called out. Open, yelled the comms officer. Fear not the enemy, for he is scared. Do not show him mercy, for he will show you none. Do not embrace them, for their embrace is that of daggers. Kiali took a deep breath and ignited a force in her, a primal power her kind had forgotten. Hate our fallen kinsmen. Hate them for the lives they seek to take. Hate them for the future they seek to steal. Hate them for the fallen they insult. Give them no quarter. Give them no respite. Give them no time. They are our enemy, and until they are but smoldering wrecks falling into this star, show them the spite of the free. She reached and terminated the channel from her terminal. Ma'am, our ships, the LC started. The ships we had believed destroyed. They are firing everything they have left, Kiali said without looking at the woman. Yes, Admiral. Ask me what is happening after the battle, Kiali said as she studied the TAC map. Ma'am, Gallimar just transmitted, a comms ensign started. Enemy comms relay found. ETA for reinforcement accelerated. Intelligence suggests enemy reinforcement imminent. Kiali started to scream internally. She hated it when her classmate would pull in more forces, and in real life she knew all too well what that meant for her fleet. She had to switch plans and roll the dice, a gamble. Fleet, recall all wings and order a spearhead formation. Comms, tell Ground HQ to target enemy transport fleet. Kiali took a shuddering breath. Weapons, she nearly yelled. Ready the AMC, authorization J02A. The bridge seemed to fall silent, and the weapons officer, for the first time since the start of this battle, looked away from his terminal. He watched her for longer than what would be considered appropriate or respectful. Yes, Grand Admiral. The Nidrahian shook as the triple main guns shifted in their mounts. Their standard orientation changed as each broke and took a point in a newly forming barrel. The entirely new weapon shifted back, connecting its firing chamber with the ship's secondary reactor. Nidrahian was one of 4 battlecruisers she had. It was the only Shinigami-class battlecruiser, and was the only reason she chose it as her flagship. It is the only ship humans sometimes call a dreadnought, with its ability to change its standard triple-spinal MACs for a single-fire antimatter cannon to the bane of many admirals. Fleet is in formation, ma'am, the fleet leader informed her. AMC ready, it needs 2 kilo units to fire, said the weapons officer. Intel, find the enemy flagship and mark it for weapons, Kiali said. Weapons, target their flagship's bridge. She took a breath. We need to decapitate their forces. Comms, transmit a request for surrender to any of their ships that survive. Ma'am, we have IFF from inbound FTL. The Terran's 1st and 2nd QRF fleets are jumping in, the LC at the Intel said. Tell them to quickly jump behind our position, Kiali said quickly as she watched the countdown creep lower. We can't have them in the strike zone, and tell any other reinforcement to jump to point 010. Her TAC map let off a tone as her allies dropped back into real space before jumping again. They returned just behind her formation. Then she turned her attention back to the enemy. They grouped back up and turned their forces, all of them, back to her. Comms, order all fleets to join our formation and fire free. Weapons, time until fire, Kiali ordered. 1 kilo unit, ma'am, the weapons officer. But we will need a clear line. Comms, have the Kalmsra move out of our line in 2 kilo units, Kiali ordered. Kiali watched as the charge-up timer reached 0, and her mind wandered to a phrase a friend had said to her when they played a tactical war game together. At the time, they had said it with a hint of humor, though she doubted they would do so now. That one line of speech had sent her down a rabbit hole of Earth weapons history, a history that she never found the end of. In front of her eyes, the Kalmsra began to rise up and away from her ship's central line. And still, her mind lingered on the phrase, an odd phrase, one that her friend had spoken with humor as he deployed weapons of mass destruction on her base, weapons that had technically won him the ground war, weapons that were given to humans by the very man that had uttered the phrase so long ago. Time seemed to slow as the weapons officer initiated the firing sequence, and still that phrase, one whose origin came from the tales of a culture on the near other side of Earth to him, yet uttered in both awe and horror, by that man. She watched as the small piece of antimatter was accelerated to about a fifth of the speed of light at her enemy. Her legs ached, her eyes grew sore, and hearts sped up their pounding. And she finally could not hold on to the thought anymore, for at this moment she had become it. "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds," she said to the room as the energy burst at the point of impact, blinding their sensors and cameras. And in the dark, she let loose a single teardrop. Why the Galavrak are no more. Lanha looking around the council chamber. The 50-odd races looked uncomfortable as they waited. The ambassador of the